Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensie Owl Bob. This guy over here, he's your griot here to tell you stories and don't believe a word he says. So, it's been almost 8 weeks now that I my car blew up. I mean, didn't figure it, but the engine died. Let's say that, right? And I have been here in the deep green all that time. No one comes gets me. I mean, Sundays. A few of those Sundays, people came and got me, right? So that's nice. But, I had no food. So my buddy came and got me, and we ran, errands. So that was fun. I did all that. And now I'm back on I got him to drop me off here because I can just walk down the hill instead of walking up and down. So here I am. And I'm here to say, what do you got? What are you thinking? I mean, here the world is. And if you really look at what's going on, so I had to deal with a lot of bureaucrats today. I mean, I'm it's just ridiculous, and it all depended on this bureaucrat with that bureaucrat and this, and they all just dissed each other. Oh, this is stupid. Why are they doing it this way? Shouldn't be done this way. Da da da. We should do it this way, and it showed the level of incompetence of the system itself. Not so much the people working there because they were saying, "Oh, I was thinking of you, Al. Here I am. All you got to do is think of me, and bang, there I am. Here you are here. Yep, yep. So I'm sitting outside, and it's probably 50 degrees or 47, something like that. And it rained all day, Sunday evening, afternoon, and then all Monday, and today it was a little rainy early in the morning, and then it kind of by 9, my friend picked me up, and it was fine, and we got around, and didn't rain, and then so we went to a place for breakfast. We went for a place over here. We went to this and that, and you can see everything is falling apart. The system is crumbling, and it has been, since 1947, basically, when they rejiggered and had a new world order. And the uh, the big banking thing at Brisket, and the 1947 National Security Act, which made basically America the number one military force on the planet, and everyone went, that's what NATO was. Everyone said, okay, let America take care of it. We'll throw in some people, some planes, some boats, and Russia. They're the second biggest bad. I mean, that was obviously Russia was always all through history a second dog. They had the most land there is of any other country. Have a lot of resources like oil, and that was understood by the 20s. When the Crook brothers went in there, and when it was Daddy Crook, and the Second War was just a continuation of the first. What they agreed on in Versailles was made sure that World War II would happen. Thought you'd be walking about in shorts. It's 47 degrees, a little nippy. Good evacuation. You're not pulling apart. Nope, not pulling apart. Let them off. Yep. So nothing that we're experiencing is anything new. Nothing is, I mean, it's pretty obvious. It was very obvious to me when good old Obama was voted in. And there was no reason for him to get voted in. I mean, you know, like 18 months before he was president, he was a activist in Illinois. And then he became a state legislator. And then he went straight to being a senator in the federal government representing Illinois. And then he gave this speech that said, oh, that's a great speech. He's going to be president one day. And then he was, 18 months. Now, that is an observation of someone got placed there for a reason. Why was he placed there? Because he was smart, good-looking black guy. Every white guy who felt inferior looked at him and said, "I hate black people," right? And there was a big uptick in police. I hate black people, doing stuff, and there was a big tick in other people. I hate this, and not just black people. I hate anybody who's different than me. And that was back in '08, right? And then we blithely went on and said, "Oh, look, we got a black presidency. Everything's fine. We don't need any of these laws. We don't need to look at what we're doing." And they didn't. And things got worse. And, "Oh, we got a black president. We'll put him in again. See, we got a real democracy here, right? So, after that, there was no one, to put up against Donnie. Well, anybody could have won. They could have put Joe up there. Look, he won against Donnie, right? They could have put a lot of Democrats that could have been really good. What's his name? Buttigieg. I would think he would have been great. He would have eaten, what's his name, who had everyone's support? Bernie. He had all the votes up until California. "Sorry, Bernie, you lost." "What? I had all the votes." "Not California's a big state. Sorry, you lose." You complain, you're going to end up dead of seizure or something. Who knows? A piece of steak caught in your throat. Who knows? But if you go along, you'll be one of the more powerful senators, and you can do whatever the frick you want, and you make a lot of money. We're going to make sure your envelope's bigger this time. And Bernie went along, and he says, "I'll get it next time," right? And so the next time, he could have beaten shorts off of Donnie, but they put Joe in, a guy who was brain dead, and used the auto pen, and he's in a debate with the low-end kids. When you go to Thanksgiving, there's a grown-up table, the kids' table. That's where Joe Biden was. He was supposed to be able to eat up the floor with the kids. No, his eye blew up. He got so pressured, his eye blew up. That right there. No one ever talked about that again. I mean, it looked unbelievable. He looked like a, a Star Wars villain. Same with what's her name, Tazza Gabbard. Woo-wee. So all this stuff is so right in our face, right? And so today I visited so many different bureaucrats of so many different flavors. And what bang, boom, bang, bing, bing, boom, bam, trying to get this certain thing done. And I've been telling people about it since March. No one has done squat. Then they go, "Oh, after November 1st, we're going to lose all this, and we haven't done it." I went and had to do it. Me, a guy who's crippled, can't see, my phone doesn't work. I went and took care of it in less than 4 hours, right? So that was the interesting thing. Well, I don't understand. Why do people come down here not knowing where they're going? It's like a conga line. There's 4 cars in a row. This is a dead-end road. That's a logging road. Can you hear them? They go down another quarter mile. They're not going to be happy. Because one is a Prius, got a clearance of about 4 inches. The other is, I don't know what it is. But that's what I'm talking about. This is all falling apart. Now, there's a real good opportunity that the majority of the people on this planet are righteous, nice, good, kind. You should go watch the end of the movie of, what's his name? Charlie Chaplin has a movie called The Last Dictator or something close to that. And if you go watch it, you could see the storyline of what it is. I don't understand people. And I've been, studying human beings for the last forever, right? Let's see. His eye blew up. Yeah. You missed that? Go watch when they put Joe on the kids' table for the debate, back when they were fishing for someone to go up against Donald Trump. He'd already been president. We've already had the pandemic. Things were really screwed up. We had the worst economy we've ever had in 100 years. The stock market was in the basement. No one had a job. Crime was through the roof because everyone was at home going nuts, killing their spouse. And that's when, JoJo took over. So there was no place but to go up from there. So you get the guy who can only lift the lowest bar, and there you go. Bob's your uncle. So he does a whole bunch of stuff that kind of looks pretty good. I mean, we come out of the pandemic better than anybody else, better than before the pandemic. The EU's GDP, gross domestic product, was a good 20% bigger than the United States. It was 30% below ours, and it's still going down. Russia was totally had a hard time. If it wasn't for their oil exports, everyone would have been eating each other's leg, right? So what did they do? They have a war. Why would you do that? Oh, and it's only going to take 2 weeks. Well, here it is, 4 years, and now, the war that's supposed to have been on Russia's side from waiting them out, Ukraine is chewing them up. So. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yeah, that's my younger brother. So yes, pretty much if you just take a look at anything that's on any, NBC, CNN, CBS, MSNBC, Fox, PBS, any of those things, they're all the same story, told the same way with a little, the camera turned a different way. It's really bizarre. And you have to watch it just, if you could line, they're talking about something in the news, one specific thing. Let's say, the closing of the government and what's going to happen November 1st, right? So I went to all these bureaucrats, and a third of them weren't getting paid, but they were still going to work because they were essential workers. As of November 1, they're not going to work. There's no money in the piggy bank, even to run the show. That's how close to the chest our government was running itself. And they passed the biggest tax break for the wealthiest people on the planet. That will affect a $20 trillion debt in the next 10 years. Good idea. And that's what the Office of Management and Budget said. Who knows if they're right? They don't exist anymore. Half the organizations that took statistics don't even, we're never, ever going to get anything straight on how many people worked this month or lost their job this month or were on disability. That is long gone. The people who had that job, long gone. The organization that existed was, douched, And Elon took all of the data. He just walked out with the servers, right? And brought it down to Tennessee, to Memphis, to his big, beautiful brain of his AI. I think it's called Scumbag. And he's dumping all of the government data, and this one person was going, well, we can't do that because we had to protect the people's private information. Well, I said, buddy, it's already gone out the door. That's like the horse. It's left. All that stuff with the IRS had gone, Social Security gone. Elon Husk took it away. Call me again. Okay. So anyway, that is what's shaken, right? And what are you going to do with that, You know what you got to do with that? You have to go and look at your neighbor on one side of you, right? If it's an apartment, say, hey, how you doing? Why don't you come in and have a cup of tea? And if you need anything, just knock on my door. There, I'm right next to you, right? And you want to do anything? You want to go to a party? You want to go to the movies? You want to do anything? Oh, now they're coming back. Well, that's good. They got themselves out of the pickle that's on the other end. Let's see how they do with the stone apocalypse. You hear them spin their wheels. Anyway, so what are you guys thinking? We are, hear it? We're having a problem. Oh, good boy. He realized, go to the side where the road is sturdy, not the center where all the stones are slippery. So using our spiritual eyes. Exactly. That's what we need to open our hearts to the love of our neighbor. You know, just read Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. You know, the New Testament. You know, I spent 7 weeks on my front lawn. It was beautiful. It was like 60 to 80 degrees every day, and at night it was like 50. So it was 7 weeks. It was beautiful. Now it's a little cold. It rained the last 2 days straight. I'm living in a let's see if I can imagine this. Let's see, where is this button? Here it is. See how wide this is? Like from there to there is how how wide my camper is, right? And from that chair, you know, from that chair to where my foot is how long my trailer is. And it is stuffed with tons of books and supplements and you name it. So I have a space to walk around like 4 square feet this way. So I'm squished all the time. But my lawn is big and beautiful. And I sit on it and it's pretty amazing. And so the trees are turning colors, right? I'm saying how black they were, but a good deal of all the leaves have already fallen off. But it's gotten cold enough so where the trees are starting to turn colors. So the tourists have been here in a big way, and the federal government's been closed. So there's 2 national parks within this mountain range here, right? And the people, not the workers, I mean, some of the workers, but a good deal of the people who lived there, who had businesses, they took their workers up to open the national parks and run it themselves. And a number of the, guys who are Smokey the Bear guys, they were up there, not getting paid, but overseeing their town neighbors, keeping it alive. And so, in our neck of the woods, they did a little news thing on it that kind of went viral. So this season of the leaves has been a very good one. So this whole neighborhood had dodged a bullet, whereas a place like Las Vegas is dying, meaning the Canadians who gave 40% of Las Vegas its money haven't been there since Donald Trump started going after Canada, right? Now, what people don't realize, back in the day when they wrote NAFTA, North American, Federal Trade, blah, 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 basically made Canada, United States, and Mexico one country, a federation of 3 countries. Also, Greenland was in there, and so is Panama, and so is a couple of South American countries, right? No one knows this. No one's ever read that law. Even the guys, the senators who passed it, didn't freaking read it. It was, And so when they rejiggered it, because what it did, and there's a thing called NORTHCOM, which is this extension of NATO, but it's basically the United States, Canada, Mexico, and a few South American countries as a military economic bloc, right? And so when Donnie rejiggered the deal, right, he did it because NORTHCOM was housed, the place where the new capital of this federation was going to be was in Canada, not the United States. And so Donnie said, oh, no, we can't have that. So he redid it as America, blah, 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 whatever it was. They named it. And he didn't even read it. He didn't even know it. And his chucklehead guys, And what happened was Canada and the others strengthened their position and weakened America's. So, did Donnie do it just out of raw stupidity? Well, he had people watching everything he did. They let him do it. Who were those clowns? They were the, grown ups, the people who had been in charge of, the United States and hegemony for the last 20 years. So they knew what was going on. And the bottom line back then, and it was started back with Jimmy Carter, the United States was going to die. Right? Not die like not there, but taken way down to the level of Banana Republic. Have you guys ever visited Banana Republic? Right? Have you been to Haiti lately? Are you ready for that in your little town? I used to live in Haiti, back in the 80s, early 80s. I spent about 2 years in the Caribbean, in a place called Tortola, U.S. Virgin Islands, Jamaica, and Haiti, and Santo Domingo, right? Which is that Hispaniola, that island. The poor part is Haiti, the slave part is Haiti, the rich people, Santo Domingo, right? Really flash, really. Anyway, wrong side of the tracks. It's like a literary a motif. So here we are. 20 minutes, 52 seconds. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Here it is, almost 4 p.m., right? And see, Amaro, the collective currency and land mass. All I hear is crickets now. Yep. But when the shit hits the fan in the next few weeks, first off, November 1st, half of the people who, like me, I just spent the last bit of my ABT card, and that's probably the last I'll ever see of that. That'll probably go away. We won't have that. And which will then disenfranchise the farmers even worse. They're really fucked. I mean, China was their biggest consumer. They were making loads of money. Then nobody buying our stuff. Thank you, buddy. It's good to hear from you, too. So, but the real deal is none of this matters. In the real deal, what Donnie has done, how he's destroyed the deep state or the bureaucracy, that's all the deep state was, the bureaucracy. It's a good thing. Now people are going to have to live with it. They're going to have to figure out how to get along with their neighbor. They're going to have to figure out, what this country really, we need a new constitution and a new Bill of Rights, because the one we had was never worth the paper it was written on. The paper now is worth way more. But everything it said was just there for the ultra rich, the founding fathers. That's who they were. They were the oligarchs of their time, right? And it's been that way ever since. Every president has been related to every other president. I think there's only one president who wasn't in the DNA of the reptile family. That's the presidency, right? So you don't hear anyone talking about anything. I mean, yeah, David Icke talks about this. Good old dark journalist, but those guys. David Icke is a righteous guy. He really does the best he can do, which is great. I love David. He's a great guy. I met him. I've known him, when he was still a youngster in the 90s. I met him, and actually, when did he? I think in the 80s, when I was at the U.S. Psychotronic Society, I think I met him at one of our conferences. But anyway, I digress. I don't know whether it's the late 80s or the early 90s, not quite sure. But anyway, I met him a number of times. A great guy, a really humanity. He's really, yeah, he's written a zillion books, and they sell pretty well. And he has those big lectures that he charges for, like in stadiums. Yeah, so good on him. He's actually giving people stuff to think about. Like, we're being run by reptiles. Well, we are. just look on how our government acts. If that's not a reptilian, and that's given reptiles a bad name. I had a girlfriend who was a exotic dancer, and she part of her act were these white pythons that would enter and leave different orifices of her body. Just for an aesthetic. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, man? Anyway, so I got to really like rats and and snakes because the rats were there to be fed into the jaws of the white snakes. And she let the rats, they weren't in cages, they ran around the apartment. And they were brilliant. They were smart. They could work together. They had tools. They were building a 747 to fly out of there, right? A rat size 747. And, she did the exotic dancing girl thing for private parties and big fancy men place where she'd make a couple of grand a night and work 2 or 3 nights of the week. And I would be working during the day, and she loved it when I came and visited her things. Sometimes she took me to these private parties. She had this outfit me to wear where I look like a genie from the bottle, with a turban and the silks and all of that. And I was in pretty good shape. I was in my late 20s, early 30s with her, and before Donna. And so we make quite, I mean, getting on the subway, her barely naked and a cape around her, big, long cape that she could pull around her, and me, looking like a genie. And this is kind of when I, was walking around wiring things in New York, carrying 70 pounds of tools and stuff wherever I went. So, you carry 70 pounds of something for about 4 or 5 miles every day, going up and down stairs and doing this and that. You don't have to go to the gym. David spent a weekend in Glastonbury in '92, a real show. Well, David Bowie could put on a show like nobody's business. He really, really, you know what it was? Did you ever see that movie about the 15-year-old kid who writes for Rolling Stone and, in the 60s and 70s, he goes out with Led Zeppelin and people like that. And the movie, it's by that guy named Crow. He's well known for all his 1980s movies, but he made this movie. We could be famous, or we were famous, or something like that, right? It's about the girls who were the groupies, but they weren't. They were band-aids, right? And anyway, the underlying whole thing of that was who was cool. And when you realize it, and in that movie, the only two people who were cool was the head Band-Aid girl and the kid at 15, writing, mercilessly critical things for Rolling Stone about these bands, not just like puff pieces, but really talking about music and the art form of rock and roll. And when Muddy Waters played this song and they're the Allman Brothers playing the same song and what's the difference and how they were and blah, blah, blah. Right? So the real bottom line is what is cool? Almost famous. That's it, right? And so the real deal about what is cool is anyone who can walk in a room being comfortable with who they are. They don't have to impress anyone. They don't have to wear any clothes. They don't have to have any secret sneakers or have a real flashy car or any of the above. If you just show up and you're yourself and you talk to people like they're human rather than a star or something. I didn't know David Bowie was David Bowie until the third day I knew him. Because all I knew him as was David. And, I met him at Danceteria. We spent the whole night out. He was at the Waldorf, or the other one, the big fancy one off the park. And we went to the Oak Room they never closed. And so they had a really good breakfast from like 3 a.m. till, 11 a.m. And then they had a really great lunch from, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then they took 2 hours off, and then they had a really amazing dinner until 11 p.m. Right? So it never closed. It had different shifts, but it was always the Oak Room. And when David and I walked, it was the sun. The sky was turning pink. It was obviously going to be sun up any moment. And I take it, we walked down 50 whatever street that was, and the sun was at our back, and it was shining straight down from the east, right down this street. That was 50-something street, and we were walking towards the park where he was at that fancy hotel, and our shadows went down the street for blocks because there was nobody on the street except him and me, and he was a little taller than me, and we talked about everything, you name it. We talked about music and art and politics and esoteric things and occult things. And, that's why he thought, wow, I meet you at this place and you're just the guy working there changing light bulbs for the exit lights. But I've had the most, I took him to a Frankenstein monster that parked cars. And on top was the mobsters grilling sausages and, playing bocce and pinball, where kids were jumping to set the pins again before the guys threw the ball at them, and that was part of the game. If the kid could jump on the way, so if he got hit by the ball or a pin and he broke a finger or something, the mobster would give him $100. I mean, some of those guys would just move a second slow enough so they get hit in the head and be unconscious and bleeding from the head, and the guy would give them like $300 or $400. Anyway, and that David's there, and David's talking aesthetics with mobsters who really understand aesthetics because mobsters have to. So from that point of view, we go from there over to from Washington Square where this monster is. I don't think it's there anymore. But it was an amazing machine, and I used to fix it all the time. That was one of my shticks I did for Grandpa Stoll. I mean, he built it. He kind of put it together with the Otis brothers. And, it still was working I guess that was the 1980s. And so anyway, we went from there over to Luna's. We walked over, kind of down and then over through the West Village, and then we stopped in to see who was playing at the Village Gate. Nobody was. There were some people up there playing the guitar, and he was listening to a little bit, and so let's go. And we went on, Pimpin' Lounge. He kind of stuck our head in there, and I worked, I wired all these places. I fixed things for them. And so I could go to any of these clubs. I didn't have to wait online. I'm the doorman. Hey, Al, how you doing? Is this your friend? Yeah, this is Dave. Dave, this is Bobby. Bobby Bentnose. Anyway, so we go in and take a look, and David, and we go on, and we went to Luna's, and Luna's was just kind of closing up around midnight, but we went around the back through the alley, came in through the kitchen. There's a dining room there for Grandma, her family, and the staff, and the mobsters. Mobsters never ate out in the public. They ate at this dining room. And, it's about, somewhere between 11 and 12, and we kind of walk in there, and Grandma, Luna, who's it's named after, she goes, "Oh, this is my boy. Oh, I love this boy. I love this boy. There's nothing he can't do." And I said, "This is my friend David." And she goes, "Are you a musician?" And he goes, "Yeah." And she goes, "You remind me of somebody now, somebody interesting." And this guy, David Bowie, just looked like he walked off the cover of GQ. He had these linen pants, a silk shirt, and a sweater tied around his neck, like he just came off the tennis court, right? And he had clean shaven, every hair on his head, perfect, right? Me. Anyway, she goes, "I bring everything you love. You want some..." She had this stuff called, it's a liqueur that you drink before your meal. Kind of cleans your palate and kind of makes you, woo, it's like drinking just enough LSD, right? Oh, what's it called? It's a lemon drink. Lemon's yellow, right? And so she brought us that. and a pot of hot tea. So we had this little glass with lemon jello in it and one ice cube. So it's cold, 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 and it's a little watered down because otherwise it kind of tasted like, you know, motor oil. I mean, it's pretty thick stuff. So anyway, we drank that and had this really fine Egyptian Turkish tea that was yummy, just very, right? And then she just keeps bringing stuff. You know, first she brings some escarole, right, with little these cheese kind of pastas, and then she brings a soup. That is the same thing, you know. It was like the water, the garlicky onion water that the escarole was cooked in, right? And that the pasta was boiled in, right? And then she, you know, strained that out. So it was just a minestrone. It's just not a clear, but a kind of clear liquid, but really tasty, right? Got every taste in there. And then she brings, you know, fish and vegetables, right? And then she brings ossobuco, which is like lamb. And then she brings a plate of cheeses and mints and fruit, and so we have that and have espresso, and you know, by the time she served the soup, she sat down with us and she poured herself a bowl and was eating and saying, "So David, where are you from?" "Oh, I'm from England. I'm from," and he said exactly where he's from and what he was, and she says, "There's something about you I know." Anyway, so and she's talking about music, and she goes, "What kind of music?" He goes, "Well, I love every kind of music. You know, I play everything and I write everything, and I'm like a storyteller." And she goes, "Ah, like Muddy Waters." He goes, "I love Muddy Waters." And you know, she goes, "Can you play any of his songs?" "Oh yeah." And she goes and she brings out a guitar, and there was David Bowie, looking like he just walked out of GQ from the tennis courts, eating this phenomenal Italian meal made by this grandma who grew up during the black, when Italians were lower than black people. And she spent her youthful days up in music halls up in Harlem. And her father had a little store that sold all the Italian goodies, right? They would actually, make, what is it when you smoke? Smoked mozzarella. They used to make smoked mozzarella on the street, right? And she still did for that restaurant, right on, I forgot what, I think Thompson Street or Thomas Street, one of those streets. Anyway, so, and so we started talking about why people like certain things, what cool was. And this whole concept of cool is, if you look at it, it is a constant thread in all of human culture. I mean, look how the Egyptian pharaohs dressed up. Come on, they're trying to be cool. But Moses showed up, and that guy was cool. He didn't have to have all those frills and whoop-de-doos and tattoos. No. Hey there, Jay. Said hi. Said hi. Almost. Yeah, almost famous, right? So that guy has a book out now about his younger days, about that period, right? And further on. And the book is called We're Not Cool, meaning the people who aren't considered cool as the cool kids in the school are, they're the real cool ones, right? What you smoking? Really nothing. My days of smoking are long gone because it really, that nun crushed my esophagus. I never was a big smoker. It always had a whatever positive effect it might have had, and I didn't do it. And once I went to the ashram and learned how to meditate and go into state, I didn't need drugs. I could see anything, any drug Could feel anything, just by breathing a different way. It's really not hard. It's truly amazing. I've had a number of what I called mystery schools, where I taught people all these interesting little techniques and things. I even did it on the, go back and see some of my shows. I did a number of shows where I did, guided meditations, right? And some people got it, but the majority, what are you doing? I said, hi, you look cool. What's up with your eyebrow? It's like, anyway, you know, Obi-Wan Kenobi, he was cool. He didn't even have to try. I mean, he was cool when he was young Obi-Wan, he was cool. When he was the master to Luke, he was cool. When he was the Padawan to the other guy, he was cool. He was always cool. He didn't have to flash anything. He always had a nice, he was a little cheeky monkey. He always had a little something to say, but he didn't have to go on and on. You know what I mean, man? And so the question is, we're at one of these very interesting moments where we can make a big difference. Like that movie, Forrest Gump. What that movie was about. Forrest was, like, duh, but he was always in the right place at the right time. And in that moment, he did the right thing every time. He saved all his buddies. He didn't even think twice about it. He just did it. He was of all the movies I've ever seen, the one movie that truly defines and denotes agape love is Forrest Gump. Because every person, a lady, he's got this box of chocolates he wants to give to impress his girlfriend, but he's sharing it with this old lady who likes chocolate. And he sold, most of it, right? And so, but he still takes a box to her, half eaten, and she looks at it, and she knows who he is. She probably knows that he shared it with some old lady or somebody who liked chocolate, or, because she'd been around him. That's her real boy. She missed the boat, but now she's not going to miss the boat. I see you're saying you don't need to try to fit a certain mold to be cool. That's exactly right. Kinda do our best to be good, to stick to our principles. Right, exactly. Be who you really are, right? And that's really what we're put on this planet to be. God put us here to realize who we really are and what we're supposed to really be doing. I keep telling you guys that I spent 7 weeks sitting in the sun at my back, watching the shadow grow across my front lawn, right? And that's all I did for 7 weeks. Until Sunday when they came and got me. And I went to church and then hung with a few people, and then they brought me back just before it started raining. And then it rained all Sunday afternoon and Sunday night and Monday. And that's good because things were getting a little brittle. I mean, it could have burnt the house down, and now it won't. So that's good. And it's going to rain again, and that's good. So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland. Come on, let's have a few more of those thumbs up. And how about some subscribers? We need more subscribers. And I'm not going to be here as often as I was because it's, can't do it. Especially if it's raining. I can't walk, a mile and a half in a torrential rain when it's 50 degrees. I'll get pneumonia and die, right? And today was my thing to say that, meaning this thing I was telling you about that I had to go visit all of these bureaucrats and get them on the thing. Otherwise, this organization that I said, we have to take care of this, in the next 6 months. Did all of the clipboard people, all of the really, people in charge? No. And then I asked the real high monkey muck, I said, have you done anything with this? And she goes, what? I said, the thing that after November 1st, if we don't have it, we can't do what we do. And she said, yeah, you've been telling me about it the last 6 months. I said, yeah, I have. And you lead this bunch of chuckleheads. you're responsible for certain things. This is one of them. Well, I can't do it now. I have to take my mother to the dentist. I said, okay. So that means 20,000 people aren't going to eat anything. Well, stop doing that. I don't want to feel guilty. I said, you wanted to be in charge. You wanted to be the boss. You wanted to get all the pats on the back. Not a problem, I said. I'll take care of it. And these 6 months, I keep saying, hey, we need to do this. And I've got it pretty much, I spec'd it all out, what we have to do, but you have to do this. And they said, well, and I said, here's 6 pieces of paper, sign your name where that dotted line is. What am I signing? I said, well, you had 6 months to really look at everything. Otherwise, I mean, how long have I been helping you? 5 years. Have I ever screwed anything up? Never. Has anyone not had the record that I had? No one. Does anyone actually ever, jump on stage and say, I did this? Everybody. Who doesn't do that? You don't. But then she goes, but everyone knows you do this. And I said, that's why I don't need to say it. I don't have to be cool. I am being myself. Now, why I love you, why I thought you were the best person for the position, because you were 89%. You. That other, 11%, you worry about what people think. Well, okay, so that's good. You deal with all these people, that's fine. But I don't. I go to the person who I need, and I did. My buddy took me around to the 6 people who had the authority when I said, here, you know what their signature is? There it is. Here's all the stuff. Let's get it done. Or do you want to be responsible? I went to each one of them saying, so do you want to be responsible for 20,000 people not eating for the next forever? Do you want to be responsible for hundreds of people in about 2 months freezing to death forever? You want to be because you are. You're the guy who was in the TV shot. Everyone's gonna say you. Me, not so much. I'm the old guy who lives out in the forest. Yeah. I might freeze to death. Yes, if we get this done, I will stay warm. But that doesn't matter. I can, last winter I survived 20 degrees below zero. Even when the electricity went. People said, how did you stay warm? I said, well, I wore about 10 pairs of clothes. I took everything I had that was somewhat insulating, and I piled it on top of me and fell asleep under the pile. And in that pile, it's like, have you ever had a compost pile? My body was generating heat, and all the little microbes in all those clothes that I've never washed, kind of came alive, and they kind of moved around, and that caused friction. And so underneath the pile of all that stuff, that was like a compost pile, I was 70 degrees, right? And I just stayed there, right? And yes, when I got out, there was, I piled stuff all around the man cave. And so instead of being 20 degrees below zero outside, it was, maybe, 40 to 20 degrees inside. So anyway, that's what it is to be cool. To know who and what you are and what you do in life is not for you. Your life is not about you. The life is about the we. I get the most, fun and most bang for the buck out of helping others, not myself. Right? God always takes care of me. I live like a millionaire on $400 a month. People, how can you do that? You can't. You gotta have. No, don't do it. Because I do not spend money I do not have. I only have $400. That's all I'm going to spend. Sorry. I'm not going to buy anything. Oh, but if you had those shoes, you'd look so cool. Yeah, I am about audience interaction. But I have a guest day. A great day. Let's see, I think that I will take my like away from your system. Good. Actually, if you're going to take the like away, put a thumbs down. I'd love to see what the algorithm does with the thumbs down. So, you, Mr. America, whatever your name is there. Hello, sir. Yeah, I am watching my magic. Well, isn't that nice? So anyway, um, uh, lays in making others happy. Yep. Furry-faced friends too. Yep. Animals like, it's sad. All the rich people are throwing their animals out the windows of their car as they drive down the death road. We have 5 or 10 feral pets running around. And, before it really got cold in the last week, it was okay. They lived under this house, where they were sleeping between the registers of the heat pump, so they were kind of staying warm. And they will stay, but man, once it really gets cold. And the people who rent these, just two of these places that are like Airbnbs that are a mile and a half from my house. And they both, texted me saying, "Hey, what's going on? People complaining about animals. What's?" Because I know they're not mine, but they know I'm here all the time. Don't have a car, see everything. I said, "Well, people have been coming up the death road and just throwing their pets out the window. They don't want them, and they're mostly little kitties and puppies. I mean, none of the animals are more than a year old. I mean, they're somewhere between 6 months and a year old. I mean, they're not babies, but they're thrown out the window to fend for the sun. So anyway, it's kind of what our government is doing to the general public, and what the world leadership is doing to the people. There's close to 3 billion people on this earth who are experiencing the life of living on the Gaza Strip. It's not just the Gaza Strip. Sudan has 82 million people who are just and they're running around, and the government is just bombing who's ever right. This is a free fire zone. We invented that. He got that truck again. What kind of? I don't know. Some people, I just don't know. But anyway, true happiness. Yes. I don't know. And they don't fix. I mean, I'm the only guy who takes care of this road. The 3 miles of this road. Now, I don't do the death road anymore, but the mile and a half, and I really, 3/4 of a mile, I've fixed. So unless they, take dynamite to it, they can't hurt the road. But there's a good 1/5 of a mile. That's like from the top of the hill to the middle of the hill. That's the steepest. It's like a 40-degree angle. And these people with the money, they thought, oh, we'll just put stone on it. And they did, but the wrong size. Instead of little teeny blue ones, they put the ones that are the size of a marble. So when cars drive down that thing, it's like they're driving on marbles. It's really, is that what's going on? So anyway, what can I say? That's about it. You guys got anything? So as I keep saying, that things are very obvious. Nothing's changed from, and when there was light, it's been the same story. The 7 weeks that I sat in the sun talking to God, I just didn't sit there. I read the Bible, and I read other things like the Course in Miracles, and Bloom's book on runes, and talking to God, or conversations with God. And then I'd write, little stuff, and I don't have my laptop, so I can't write voluminously. because I only had a pen and paper, and I can't even read my own handwriting. I have to like go into state, ask my mother, "Hey, what did I just write?" You know. Jala Rubis. Is that you, Jamie? I never know who. Everyone has so many different names. Well, so do I. I have, my handle of Sensie Owl Bob. But don't be fearful of what's going on. You know. And as God always tells me, it could be worse, right? So, the majority of people who are watching me on this show, they're in places where it's not the Gaza Strip, right? And even in the Gaza Strip, there are people I know there who I communicate with through other people, and basically, it's really interesting because they send me things like they send me stuff that these people I know people in the strip, and those people in the strip send them like everyone else does, TikToks and short streams and Facebooks and selfies of what's going on in Gaza. And the majority ones I see, these people are still having a life, still loving people, still happy. Yeah, they're scared. They look like a straw. They're all, quite thin. Their skin and bones. And that's why the parliamentars of these war zones don't let the news in. And that's why the people who own the news don't send the reporters in to do it, because everyone's getting a grift off of all these wars. Not everyone, but all the rich are. The guys who are in Chuckle's cabinets, they're they're making trillions. He's only been there 10 months, and he's made trillions. And there's a law against it. The Milmarch cause, right? Tipperary. Yep. That's what I thought. But I get all these different energies from you, Jay, and they're all different people. You're many folk, and not like multiple personalities, but your personality is so deep, it resonates in many different ways. And there are a lot of you that in the cadre who, and that's one of the common traits that I see is that the people who actually leave good, interesting things, and also put it in capital so I can read it without my glasses, have this depth. And the other people who are shallow were shallow, when they talk about, I'm taking a dump or something. That's, everyone takes a dump. It's not like something special, right? Now, there are people who have lost, 20 feet of their colon, and now they have to crap out of a plastic bag. That's called a colostomy bag. Yeah, that's not very fun, but why does that moron drive that car? He's just going to wreck it again. And he has the same problem he's going to have the same problem. He's going to do the same thing. And if he has the same accident he had last time, he was lucky. He got his vehicle jammed between two trees. But if he hadn't got his vehicle jammed between two trees, he would have tumbled down a 300-foot embankment. And he had the window open. And he was kind of, when he drove by me, before he went nuts and the car zoomed ahead, he would have flown halfway out the window, and then the vehicle would have fallen on top of him and chopped him in half. And I can see the way he's driving that vehicle, and that the vehicle's main problem is not fixed, because he has to keep the engine revved really, really high so his power steering and brakes work. So he's got it in a high gear. So if he loses his, he's got his foot on the brake and the gas at the same time, and he is going to fly and do the same thing he did, because that's what happened. His foot slipped off the brake and onto the gas, and the car just flew because it's a gigantic engine. But he was lucky. God was with him. It stuck right there. And I do. I love those guys, and I try to, I said, why don't you guys help me rake the holes that you put in the road? He said, well, why should we? Because you're doing it. I'm a almost 90-year-old guy who's like, my every joint is bone on bone. It's difficult for me to walk, but I do. Right? I walk all up here so to talk to you guys, right? But what can I say? And it's not like these kids are so much worse than when we were kids. No, no. It's pretty much the same, right? But myself, when I was a kid, from being a little kid, I listened. I was surrounded by all these really interesting grown-ups, right? Like Malcolm X's temple was just down the road from my grandma's apartment. And I used to hang out there. And he'd walk through, and that place was great. Had a library, had a school, had a place you could just go in and take whatever clothes you wanted. It had, it was the bomb. And me, not so much. I would go into the library. I would go into the cafeteria and get a sandwich or a bowl of soup or something. But I was like the only white guy there. And people they knew who I was, I was Grandma's little bouncing ball owl. And and I would, you need anything? Oh, you want to help? Sure. And I would, right? And I would listen, and they would tell me how to do this or do that, or what it was like back then, and tell me or sing a song while we were working. It was just the best of times. When I tell people I lived in Harlem and lived with black people, oh man, it must have been really tough, really disgusting. No, this is when it was the Renaissance. These people were like Leonardo da Vinci, not people trying to get over. So anyway, and that's what cool is. Malcolm X was definitely cool. Now, he took a long time getting there, but he got, he spent the last 20 years of his life being really cool, right? So, and fragrance. Yes, the essence and fragrance of life. Ooh. Do I have any gloves? It's starting to get cold enough where I need gloves. Yes, I do have gloves. The magic pocket has gloves. Yep. Got gloves. I can stay on the deck a little longer. Let's see. The only thing is I gotta keep one. What can I do? One thumb? Yes, I think I can do that, yes. Freaking. Anyway, let's see. How many people there? Okay. So, yeah, how about some thumbs up? How about some comments after the shows? How about going back and watching I have more. I bet you I'm pushing 3,000 shows. I've been doing this almost 10 years. I started doing this in 2015. Right? So that's 10 years, right? Give or take. It's 25 right now, I think. Yes, right. So 10 years, you know. So anyway, so the thing to do, right, is to whatever you're doing, wherever you are, think about what do you really want in life? What do you want in life? What do you want? What would make you happy? Oops, I did it again. Great show, right? Cops. Bad boys, bad boys. What you gonna do? Yes. When they come for you. I mean, that's everybody. If you don't know that they're gonna be coming for you at some point, ba bam. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, what do you really want, guys? There's four of you there. What do you want? Come on, speak up. What do you want? What would make life bye bye? Oh, you're leaving, not bam bam. Okay. Bye bye. Yep. Bye bye. Baba. So that's like a religious. No, thank you. Yep. So, what would you really, really want for you? What would make your life special? What would make you really feel righteous and good and happy to be in your life and not like, oh, I wish I was dead. Oh, everything sucks. What would be the thing that would make you happy? Hmm? Can you tell us? Anyway. So we've had this show now 65 minutes and 27 seconds. That's pretty good. Now, I haven't had a show since Sunday, right? And that show was all of like 3 minutes long. And the show I did before then was probably 4 days before that. So because I can't get anywhere, right? I don't have a car, period, you know. And for a week and a half, somebody was here, so I couldn't just sit on the porch and talk to you guys, right? Because I can't. Somebody's here, it's their, they're here, right? So they're nice enough to let me sit on their porch when they're not here, right? So anyway. And that's what a neighbor does, right? There's other neighbors that are closer. I just have to walk a little bit through the forest and say, hey, can I? No, I'm not going to let you do that. Why should I let you? I said, okay. And then, when the water was like shooting out of the road and they had no water, oh, well, help me. Why do we stop? What do So, basically I said, listen, do you have a shovel? Yes, I have a shovel. I said, okay. I'm going to, can you drive me back to my place? Okay. I got a few things out of the magic box. I said, let's go back. I said, dig the hole. I said, well, shouldn't you? I said, why? Old man, you are 40 years old, and I'm pushing 80 and have arthritis in every joint and a whole bunch of other things. Yeah, you want me to dig the hole. Okay. No, you fucking dig that hole, right? So, he basically dug the hole, right? And then I said, okay, I turned off the water and it's draining down the hill. Well, there's water in the hole. I said, yeah, there's water in the hole. Now you got to jump down in that hole and see this little thingamajig goes over the hose where it came off of the fitting. And you basically take this plastic tape and run around the fitting and then stick the hose on it and then tighten this thing down. And then it'll be fine. Well, the other ones aren't like that. Yeah, they glued the other ones. And for some reason, this one didn't stick or they didn't do enough glue or something. But this will work just fine. And so how do you know? I said, well, we're going to ride up and turn the water back on to this. And if it's shooting out of the hole when we come here, well, then I know that didn't work and you'll have to go call a plumber. Anyway, so it did work. And his wife goes, "Oh, we have water," right? He didn't say thank you or anything, right? Didn't invite me in for a cup of tea. He said, I said, "Can you take me back home?" "No, no, I got stuff to do." So now that's the death road. I don't take the death road. The next time I see him, his car has gone into that hole because it's 3 months later and he hasn't filled the hole up. But he's a very important guy, has a very important job. He lives in reality. They're more than ungrateful. They're unconscious, which is dangerous. And the most unconscious are the morons who are running our governments and institutions. Because they're not doing it to be their best. They're doing it to get over. And that's why Kennedy got shot, because he gave that speech. Don't ask the government to do anything for you. Ask what you can do for your government. That's the only way it works. Nobody does that. Now, I do get Social Security, and people say, "Well, you played into it." Yeah, I did, right? Well, and I am the poorest on the gradating scale, so I do get medical because, if you're as old as I am and you're as poor as I am, but I'm not poor. I just don't have finances, right? Not liquid. I'm like a millionaire. So that's what it is. It's gotten colder kinda, right? Yeah, it's 46 degrees. Yeah, it's getting a little nippy. That's what happens when you live on top of a mountain. Little nippy. Anyway, so the battery, how much battery do we have here? So I think I'm gonna go because the battery's getting low, and I'm not just gonna plug it in and freeze here. So, that was a nice, pleasant conversation with you guys. Almost 71 minutes and 30 seconds. So I love you guys. How about some more thumbs up? How about some subscriptions? Tell someone, and I will, if it doesn't rain tomorrow, I will walk up the hill and do a show sometime between noon and 4, right? So I love you guys. You stay well. I'll talk to you later. Do, 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 do.